from both houses, National and NCOP. Chair, a bit concerned, worried if the entire executive authority would not be present this evening. I'm not too sure in terms of the delegation, whether is there someone that has been delegated to lead on behalf of the executive authority in a situation where a clarity-seeking questions and explanations are coming from our side. Who's going to exercise that role? It becomes very tricky and challenging. We understand the issue of Honorable Mbapel. We wish him well in his isolation, but if you are seeing also Honorable DM Tau will be in attendance but unable to respond to questions, it becomes tricky. So if I can get an explanation in an event where one needs clarity and decisions are to be taken.
Chairperson Dodovu, can you mute your mic, please?
Will be in attendance but unable to respond to questions. Yes, Chair, if I can just get that clarity so that we ease our concern and frustration. Thank you. But it's really concerning, Chair. I understand other apologies where members are highly committed, but equally the portfolio committee, if I can just get ought to be given the attention it deserves in terms of us as members exercising our oversight role and responsibility. It's crippling us from effecting our oversight if we are not going to have executive present at our disposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we take down the presentation?
Honorable Chairman Tambia.
Can you mute your mic? Yes, can you mute your mic? Chairperson?
Yeah.
Chairperson Dodovu, okay. Honorable Hussein?
Chair, thank you very much. Can you hear me? I'm on now. Chair, I just want to find out, please, if there, what the explanation was for the DG and not attending the meeting. May I just say that, I mean, this is the first time that I've sat in a portfolio committee that we, especially if you're dealing with the strat plan and you don't have the DG present, it's unprecedented. I haven't experienced that before, but perhaps there's a good explanation for it. But I just want to make this appeal perhaps to DM Tower. I see he's online. I understand, Chair, that the DG has been appointed recently, and I think that the portfolio committee was also mindful of that over the last few weeks to months now, to allow her to acclimatize to the work that needs to be done. But I don't get the impression that that she's been properly orientated by a political principle. So I want to just make that appeal to DM Tau, and maybe he can just comment on it, because our experience thus far hasn't been one that we can feel a sense of confidence that the department was able to step away from some of the problems it was experiencing with the previous DG and the problems with the department. We had a sense of confidence, I think, that when we were informed that a new DG has been appointed, and we thought perhaps things would start getting better. But recently, and the recent experiences that we've had as the portfolio committee, I don't get that confidence that it is going to get any better. Unless, of course, there's a very good reason for it, and maybe we must ask DM Tau to just maybe explain. And perhaps, Chairperson, those items that the DG was supposed to lead on, I suggest that maybe we just carry them forward to another point, another date, and if we can continue with some of the other items on the agenda, if that's possible.
Okay. Person, you wanted to say something? I heard you raising your voice.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Oh,
I'm
you
following the
thought I was cut,
discussions.
ne? Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
DM Tau, wherever you are you able to respond to the members' concerns before we take a decision on this matter? I saw him, he had logged in, but like I said, he had tendered that apology. Alex, can you help me? Is he still there? DM Tau?
Chairperson, I'm here. Can I just
Yes.
pull over so that I can be able to comment?
To comment.
Yes.
Want
Maybe you can
pull
proceed
over.
with the other discussions. As soon as I can pull over, I will comment.
Yeah, because we have registered your apology that you had an emergency. That's what I've said that. But it's like now in the absence of any other political heads, you are in a tight corner now. I can imagine how do you pull off in the roads of Gauteng. I don't know.
Yes,
Chair, what?
he must find a secure spot. We are very concerned.
But now the chair is not recognized you. You are not the chair.
No, that's why. Oh, you want to be recognized? Okay, let me recognize Honorable Mkalipi, then Honorable Hatebe.
Yeah, can you please also recognize me, Honorable Direko?
And also
Upegi,
Honorable Direko.
Honorable, what you
now you are
call
recognized. Yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, while the
You
DM is trying to...
You were frozen.
Yes, Peggy.
Yes. Okay.
Chairperson, I want to understand one thing. While the Deputy Minister is trying to pull out of the road, who is leading the delegation from the department in the absence of the DG?
That has been my predicament, Honorable Mkhalibi, because the letter that is not even signed by the DG doesn't tell us. It just tells you officials. And when I look in the system, there's a lot of officials here who are in attendance. Because if that letter had told me who's the acting, who will be representing, I wouldn't have had issues. But the letter, the way it's written, that's why I even referred it back to the Secretariat to understand who's the author of the letter. Does it answer your concern?
And now, like the house,
Tandon Meza, please, officials, can you respect this meeting? You can't be talking on the other side, whereas we are in a meeting. Tandon Meza, can you mute your mics, please?
I am very sorry. I'm muting it.
Mkalipi, you're still on the floor. You were interjected by Temes.
Yes, Chairperson. No, I wanted to get a clarity within the absence of the DG, which we don't accept as the committee, because we view this as a disrespect to the committee as we are dealing with the adjusted and a very critical budget. So then, who is leading the delegation from the department?
Maybe let me ask the officials who are here, who is delegated to, who's leading, because the apology of the DG should have said that. Officials, I'll call the names. Chair. I know.
Oh, remember.
Temba Force, are you the leader?
Chair.
Temba Force, are you the leader of the delegation?
Honorable Chair.
Temba Force.
Yes, Chairperson.
Proceed.
Yes, Chair. I was saying previously we had this quagmire where no one was officially informed in writing that he will be a leader of the delegation, and at that time there were to and from. No one wanted to take responsibility. So I'm saying if we did not get in writing from the accounting officer, a person that will be a leader of delegation, we might find ourselves in the same quagmire like previously.
Chair, can you please recognize me? Is Direko?
Yes, that's the challenge. That's the difficulty with that apology that I've just read. Yes, Direko?
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Chair, situation like this makes one to wonder if the DG understands the importance of the committee, or if the DG is just taking us for granted. And now that we have an apology that does not have the leader of delegation and also doesn't have the reasons for the DG's absence, I will therefore suggest that all the items that were supposed to be presented by DG be referred back. We will discuss them when the DG comes. That's my submission, Chair.
Chair.
Who's calling the chair?
It's Michalakis, Chair.
It's a proposal, colleagues. Okay. Over to you, Honorable Mikalis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, just on behalf of our side, well, I can only speak for myself, but in the NCOP, this is certainly not the first time that this has happened. The executive authority has not honored a single invitation from the NCOP side. The minister hasn't appeared before us, ever. She doesn't answer our questions, and quite frankly, it is, Chairperson, not a partisan matter. It's actually the treatment that we receive on all sides and towards all political parties. This is quite frankly unacceptable from our side in the NCOP as well. I believe that that we honestly cannot be continued to be disrespected in this manner, and I would definitely support the proposal made on Wilson, and actually indicate that we need to demand that the executive needs to come and account. This is a very important meeting. We have this opportunity on our side once a year, and we definitely can't allow for us as the NCOP to be disrespected in this way either. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson. Chairperson. Chairperson.
I'm here. I will proceed with chairing the session because it would seem that Honorable Mutambi has a problem with her line. Honorable Kanya, you can proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will propose a way forward that the meeting be postponed until the executive authority comes to the committee, please. Because we have just postponed another meeting, Chair, based on the similar circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, are we allowing DM? Can you hear me?
Yes, Chair, we can hear you.
Okay.
I was still saying, are we allowing DM Dawood to say something before we take the proposals as proposed? Because where we are seated, it's as good as we are speaking to ourselves. I think that's how it looks like. DM Dawood, have you pulled off?
Honorable Chair, what happened to the DDG?
DDG
is struggling with the connection.
No, you know what I was trying to do? Yeah, he's here, the DM now. Proceed, DM.
Chairperson, once again, my apologies. I have an emergency that forced me to leave.
Yes.
To leave the house. So I did connect so that I could hear the proceedings.
Yes.
But as indicated in my apology, I would have been otherwise limited.
Yeah,
Chairperson, I should say, thank you very much, Chairperson, for understanding. I should say that the branch responsible for the presentation this evening is the branch led by DDG Faber, who is on the line. He has been responsible, together with his team, for the compilation of the report. And both himself, the Chief Director, Siabelo, and the Chief Director for Finance, the CFO, should be available on the line to deal with any questions that the committee would like to deal with. So on our side, at least, to the extent that there are officials designated to engage with the matters, these officials are available on the platform. I can't at this stage confirm, because I haven't been able to call the committee, confirm the reasons for the apology, but otherwise the rest of the team is available. Thank you very much, Chair.
Colleagues, we conclude this matter, because already you've heard the DMs respond to these matters. How do we then conclude? There was a proposal that we must postpone this meeting.
Chair Hussein's here.
Yes, Hussein.
Chair, may I just say this? And in fairness to DM Tau and even DM Bapela, I think the members of our portfolio committee will agree with me when I say that in almost every single meeting, both the deputy ministers make the effort to come and attend the meeting, even if they don't have a massive contribution to make, but they take it seriously, and we have great respect for that. You know, it shows that the executive and the DM, both our deputy ministers, you know, show the level of respect to the portfolio committee. They're there all the time to deal with issues. We understand that the minister sometimes is unable to attend. We make an issue about it, but she's also been attending the portfolio committee meetings. And the question that the executive, you know, that there is a genuine willingness from their side to try and respect to Parliament when it comes to the portfolio committee. I'm afraid, Chair, that if we don't fix this problem now, this is going to go on for the next 4 years. And although I understand and I accept the explanation from DM Tau, I think that the DG must understand that these things must be taken seriously. And if you think that there is something more urgent to be dealt with, then I'm afraid that that's an insult to Parliament itself. This portfolio committee is a committee of Parliament. It's not just a committee of colleagues who are sitting to have a conversation. So if you show disrespect to the portfolio committee, you are showing disrespect to Parliament as an institution. And that's the point I think that the DG must be orientated with, especially on these type of matters. So I want to support the proposal by Direko that we postpone those matters, and when the DG is available, she can inform us, and then we reconvene.
Yes, I think that should be the route to follow. Save to also to emphasize to Honorable George Mikalakis that in our case as the NA, we have never had challenges on the attendance of the executive. It's just that, like today, there's no more member of the executive that will be able to also respond. It's the absence of the DG, also the apologies of the members of the executive, including the DM, because the DM has got a pressing, DM Tau has indicated to us that he has got a pressing family matter that he needs to attend to. So basically, that will be in line with that. Yes, who's calling the chair?
Mpumza, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Mpumza.
Yes, Chairperson, I think that the submission made by Honorable Terrico, that we rather postpone this meeting, Chair, and defer it to the next meeting because we can't continue in this particular situation. Thanks, Chair.
I think there's consensus on that matter. We'll await the DG to tell us when is she available. That's the other issue. Also in the absence of any member of the executive, because we are dealing, like as Honorable Hadebe is also raised, at least we have either a deputy minister in attendance. We understand that also DM Bapela is off sick, and then DM Tau can't make it. Also the minister, she's still busy in the presidential coordinating council meeting. And then if the DG was here, at least we knew we were going to proceed with the meetings. So she just cited pressing matter. She didn't tell us what is it. And in her letter, there's no any other person who's delegated to act on her behalf, despite what the deputy minister explained to us. So we'll adjourn this meeting and await the availability of the DG to be present. But the other issue, the DG of Traditional Affairs is here. We're also supposed to deal with the adjustment budget of the DG of Traditional Affairs. Do we also adjourn the meeting to say that they present both on the same time, or we can hear the presentation by the Department of Traditional Affairs? I need guidance on that. Honorable Director?
Yeah, I was saying, can we only refer back the items that were supposed to be presented by the DG of the other department, and then for traditional affairs we can proceed?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that the floor of the House?
Chairperson?
Yes.
Today we're not supposed to get the MISA presentation as well, and the DTA and COGTA.
Yes, my apologies. The MISA apology, there's an apology from the CEO of MISA. He has a family bereavement. There's a funeral at home, but there's somebody who's delegated. That's why I didn't mention the apology. There's somebody who's got the delegation of authority to make the presentation on behalf of MISA.
Okay. So, no, still on the floor, Babu Mpumza. So therefore, I agree with the suggestion of Honorable Tereko to say that it will be very unfair to the DTA because they are here, they are prepared, and they are ready to go on with the meeting. So I think we must listen to them without saying that they must go home, because there is nothing wrong they have done. But coming back on the issue of the DG chair, I think it's not enough to say that we must postpone the meeting on the basis that the DG is not here, and that's all. Because this is not the first time. If you remember very well, our last meeting was postponed on the basis of the incomplete information. And this is the second time that we must.
Colleagues, can you hear Honorable Mkalipi? Okay, proceed. Honorable Mkalipi? Colleagues? Colleagues?
No, Chair, we can't hear. I think with the network.
Yeah,
what
but
consequences the DG faced?
Kalipi? Okay.
Chairperson.
Can you repeat the last part? You were cut off completely. We couldn't hear a single thing. The last part of your presentation. Yes.
Is my Chairperson. I'm saying, Chair, is not enough just to take a decision to say, let us postpone a meeting on the basis of the DG. At some point, you must get a report or a full report from the office whereby the DG is reporting, because it's unfair to us as members of Parliament and the work of Parliament that you must always postpone our work on the basis of the DG absence.
Okay. That is noted as part of the minutes. We'll have to it will have to be communicated to both the minister and the DG herself. I think that's the feeling of everybody in the house. So be as it may be, then the co-chair of the NCOP, Honorable Shaina Dudu, had allowed me to chair this meeting. DG Traditional Affairs, can we put the presentation on the screen so that then you can proceed with your presentation? DG Dipov.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and Honorable Chairperson of the Select Committee and Honorable members of both committees. I'm just checking if the Secretariat is able to assist with reflecting the presentation online. The presentation was circulated to members. I'm just checking if the committee secretariat is able to assist with the with that part. Thank you. Can I just check, Honorable Chairperson? I can see it on my screen. Can I just check?
Yes,
if members can see the presentation. Thank you very much.
It is loaded.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The presentation deals with two parts, and I think if we can just go to the next slide. The next slide. Okay, I think you've jumped the first slide. But this is just the outline, which just shows, apart from the two first bullets that deal with introduction and background, the focus is on the budget allocation. We presented earlier to the committee earlier in the year when the initial allocation for the 2020-2021 financial year was done. But there have been changes recently. Adjustments, special adjustments that have been effected. So we will then report to this committee, these two committees, about those special adjustments insofar as they affect the Department of Traditional Affairs. And we'll then also talk about their implications for the annual performance plan for 2020 and 2021, followed by some concluding remarks. If we go to the next slide, what the next slide just does is those two bullets, Honorable Chairpersons, just a reminder that we are here in this space because of COVID-19 and a national state of disaster being declared in the country. I think in that last bullet, if we could just take into consideration the last statement in that last bullet, which indicates that our budget as DTA has been reduced by 3 million rand, and the slides that follow will show where the money has been taken from. So we can go to the next slide. In this slide, we just indicate that when we interacted with both committees earlier, after the tabling of our strat plan and APP in March this year, we had indicated to the committees that at a later stage would come back to indicate the revisions that we would need to effect on our annual performance plan, given the advent of COVID-19. And basically what we are doing today is to share with the committee, apart from the reduction in our budget, the changes that we are introducing in our annual performance plan. And we can then go to the next slide, which then deals with the reductions in the budget. So in this slide, we basically show the reductions in the budget. I'm going to ask members to focus on the last column of this slide. It says MTF estimates. Now that MTF estimates looks at the outer years of 2021, 2022, and 2022-2023. But I'm not going to focus on that for purposes of this discussion. It will be the next two columns that I would ask the committees to focus on. One says original budget, and this is the original budget as tabled in March in Parliament. And the next one says adjusted budget. This is the adjusted budget as per the special adjustments that have been introduced now. So members would see that the top part of it reflects the, okay, I think the presentation has gone to the next slide very quickly. If I could just explain the slide before that, because at the EASD, because it just shows the budget overall before we get to the breakdown per program. So that top part just shows under original budget, as members would see that the total of the original budget was 173,399,000. So the adjusted budget is 170,399,000. So that's the 3 million that has been cut there. But also, if I could just ask that members look at the three programs themselves. There at the top, there is administration. So the reductions in administration, it just shows from 54.6 to 54.098. In the program research policy and legislation, the reduction is from 19.012 million to 17.710 million. And the third program from 99.764 to 98.9591. That's where the reductions are. The bottom part of that slide just shows the same information but broken down by economic classification. Members would see that when it comes to compensation of employees, that one has not been cut, but the cuts were under the item goods and services, where it was 37.943 as we tabled earlier this year, and is now 34.943, which is where the 3 million was taken from. The next one there is transfer and pay and subsidies. I just thought I should just alert members to this, that this is the amount that gets transferred through the Department of Traditional Affairs to the CRR Rights Commission. So there has not been a cut there. The amount has remained as it is. So I think if you look at that at the bottom of that slide, it just then shows the total as 3 million. If you can go to the next slide, what that next slide does is now to focus on the programs themselves. So under program 1, which is administration, if we stick to those two columns that I spoke about, the one that says original budget and the one that says adjusted budget. So it will show that in terms of administration, it was 54.623. It is now 54.098. The breakdown there is reflected to show how much was taken from which part of the program. The bottom part is the same principle that I explained earlier, that in terms of compensation of employees, there were no cuts that were affected. The cuts were affected under goods and services. And the total for this program is 525,000, as it's shown there at the bottom in red. The next slide is program 2, and it will then basically just outline the kinds of cuts that have been effected under program 2, research policy and legislation. The same principle, those two columns that I've spoken about, original budget versus adjusted budget. It was 19.012. It's now 17.710. Those are the cuts that have been effected. And the bottom part, again, just shows it is not under compensation of employees, but it is under goods and services where the cuts were effected. And the bottom part at the end there just shows in red the total amount that was reduced from this program is just over 1.3 million. The next slide, which is program 3, institutional support and coordination, it will basically be the same principle in this slide. As members would see there, that the two columns, original budget versus adjusted budget, it was 99.764 million. It is now 98.591 million. And the total at the bottom there is 1,173,000, and taken together, all these three totals then add up to the 3 million that I spoke about. What we do in the next set of slides, Honorable Chairpersons, is to just highlight what this means for the annual performance plan of the department. And as a slide is being moved here, just to indicate that basically what happens here is there are three things that we would like to table before the two committees. One is that there are projects that would have required us to be physically present on the ground. And it is going to be difficult with the protocols now in place for those projects to be implemented. And then secondly, there is the category of projects that would have required enabling legislation for us to implement. And we're saying it's going to be difficult for us to proceed with those projects. And then the third category is a category of additional projects that we are proposing in response to the circumstances that we find ourselves in as a result of COVID-19. So in this slide, you'll see that the first one is there was this project on research on the customary role of the Khoisan leaders focusing on the NAMA. This is the kind of research that where you can't just do desktop research, you have to be on the ground. Our teams are we're going to be required to travel. And we're saying that for a thorough piece of research to be done in this regard, it's going to be difficult for us to do that under the circumstances. Similarly, the research on compilation of African customary law, this is research that would require traveling and actual interviews and engagement with stakeholders. We're saying that it's going to be difficult for us to do a meaningful piece of research under the circumstances. We had also earlier on intended that we will work with kinships and queenships and principal traditional leadership to assist them to build capacity so that they can review their own community rules that conform to the Bill of Rights, because the concern was that some of the traditional and customary rules that obtain may not be in conformance with the Bill of Rights. But this kind of work requires us to be on the ground and meet with royal families for that work to be done. We had also said that anticipating that the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, a date on which it takes effect would have been proclaimed. We then said that we will then audit compliance with the provisions of the Act. I remember when we presented to the committee, there was concern that we shouldn't focus on 2 provinces, we should focus on all provinces. Now the difficulty is that where we are at the moment with a date on which the Act should take effect not having been proclaimed as yet, we believe that it might be too premature then to say that we now focus on assessment of compliance and monitoring of compliance in the different provinces. The next slide just then shows a continuation that also what we said we were going to do was to look at queenships, kinships, and principal traditional leadership communities. And here we're going to work with them and create capacity in those institutions to document the roles and functions of royal family members. Again, from experience, this is the kind of work that requires us to be on the ground. You can't do it virtually. You have to be there on the ground and convene meetings with royal family members to go through this kind of work. And we said it's going to be difficult under the protocols where gatherings are not allowed. Annually, the two committees would know that we used to take one kinship or queenship, and we would then work with them to document their customary laws of succession. This was one of the areas where we tried to document this customary laws of successions as part of obviating succession disputes. Because once they are documented, in future, when there is a matter of succession that arises, then they are able to refer to the document that will have been generated with their active participation. Again, from experience, this is the work where you have to be on the ground, have royal family members being convened to different meetings so that they can contribute to this research process, because these customary laws of succession in the main are not documented anywhere else, and the process then has to involve us being on the ground. We also said that we're going to finalize this work on the handbook for traditional leadership. Now, we believe that it is possible to still do some of the consultations to the extent that it is possible to do them visually, but to exhaust everything under the current circumstances, to exhaust all the consultations to the point where we then get the handbook being approved. Our concern is that this is not going to be possible. We will still continue with some of the consultations, but the key issue was to get all the consultations exhausted and the handbook approved. And our concern is that that last part might not be achieved, and therefore we are recommending that we not reflect this as part of the revised APP. We had also said that what the new legislation was going to enable us to do was to work with all the over 800 traditional councils to make sure that they get reconstituted. There must be elections, new members coming on board, and so on, because the majority of them, their term of office has actually come to an end. But this one was going to depend on a date of the act taking effect being proclaimed. We are concerned that even if it gets proclaimed now, for us to be able to work with all the over 800 traditional councils to make sure that we assist them to constitute and reconstitute the councils, it would not be possible. Of course, this was also going to require focus on Khoisan councils as well, Khoi and San councils. And we believe that to conclude all this work, it will not be possible for that to be achieved. To the extent that it is possible, whatever time it is that the legislation, the date of the legislation taking effect can be proclaimed, we will do all the preparatory work. But to then expect that we will have concluded the reconstitution process by the end of this financial year, that one will be the difficult part that may not be achieved. We had also indicated that we will then also establish the Commission on Khoisan Matters. Now, at this stage, the preparatory work has been done. A notice was issued out there in public, inviting members of the public to nominate members that can be considered for appointment as members of the commission. The minister has also gone a step ahead to make sure that she appoints a selection committee that can look at all the submissions that have been made, which committee will then make recommendations to the minister on who should be appointed. That work has been done, that is in place. But the expectation is that the actual act of establishing the commission, of appointing members, can only be done once the legislation comes into effect. And because at this stage, it's still not clear when that will happen, we are saying that it is not going to be possible to achieve that. We have agreed internally, of course, we have said, should it happen that before the end of the financial year, this is declared in terms of the date on which it takes effect, we will not step back and say we are waiting for the new financial year, but we will proceed with that process. But our concern is that making that commitment to Parliament now, when it is unclear as to when this might happen, given the challenges that we are having with COVID-19 and the delays that are happening at the moment, we might not be able to achieve that. The next slide looks at the next program and the targets for that program, which is institutional support and coordination. Two targets here specifically. We had indicated that we will conduct training for 100 traditional leaders as a start, which will then be increased over the years that follow. And we had also said that we will focus on 200 traditional councils, and then we will add a couple of more hundreds of traditional councils over the years, so that by the end of the period of the strategic plan, we will have covered all of them. Now, this is the kind of training that would require us to, they will require two things to start with. Firstly, it will require that the traditional councils themselves should be constituted. And once they are constituted, then we can do the induction. The challenge is that with the delays in the legislation, the induction period the constitution period, the period of the process of constituting the councils, then followed by the actual induction of the traditional councils, will be impacted on. And that similarly applies to the actual training that must take place on the ground for the 100 traditional leaders that we've identified there. So these are the projects, Honorable Chairpersons, that we have identified. But we are saying in the next slide that in addition to what we are presenting here, the rest of the other projects in the APP, by the way, we will continue to implement them. So those that we have not mentioned there, they remain in the APP and we'll continue with them. But we are saying in addition to these ones that we are removing, there is an opportunity to look at these others here that we have listed in this slide. We are saying that the issue of food security is quite critical under the current circumstances. And we're saying that let's see within the few months that are left now that we can work with at least 10 traditional communities to assist them insofar as food security programs are concerned, in part also as a response to COVID-19 implications. We're also saying that, well, even if we can't conduct physical training, at least let's then focus on what we can do within the protocols of COVID-19, which is let's at least complete the development of the capacity building program so that all the modules that will need to be rolled out once we get into the financial year are completed during the course of this financial year. So that we are reflecting there as work that we'll be able to do. We're also saying that there are things that relate to the regulations and directions issued in relation to COVID-19, the disaster period that has been declared. And one of those relates to adherence to funeral and cultural events protocols that have been introduced. We're saying let's work with all the provinces now to make sure that this matter is attended to. We're also saying that there is this issue that is emerging around stigmatization related to COVID-19. And you say let's work with the provinces to make sure that at least in areas of within the jurisdiction of traditional leaders, there are awareness programs on COVID-19 to obviate stigmatization. And we're also saying that there are new regulations that have been introduced when it comes to customary initiation, where customary initiation has basically been prohibited for the period of the disaster. And we're saying that we have to work with all the provinces to make sure that we monitor compliance with these particular regulations that have been introduced. These are the projects that we are adding to our APP for the 2020-2021 financial year, Chairperson. And finally, which is the last slide, we asking the committee to note the budget reductions, the allocation for the department that they've been reduced by 3 million rand, and we're also asking the committee to note the proposed changes to the 2020 and 2021 APP. These changes obviously then get carried over into the strategic plan itself, insofar as the first year of the strategic plan is concerned, 2020 and 2021. Thank you very much, Chairpersons.
Thank you, DG. Thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, can I see a show of hands? Who are the colleagues who want to interact with the presentation? Can I know the colleagues, please? Colleagues, are you there? Honorable Mkalipi?
Yes, Chair, we're here. We are raising our hands.
I can't see you.
You raise.
Please
No,
use
I've seen
technology,
you.
Kalipi.
Who else?
Honorable Mola.
Yes, Honorable Mola. Who else? Is it only two colleagues who wants to interact with the presentation?
I saw Tata's hand as well. I don't know where is he.
I also raised my hand.
Who also raised the hand? Kaisa. Who else?
Nita as well.
Honorable Ngita, you will be number 4. Who else? That's all. 4 speakers on the presentation.
Inkosi Luthuli must also raise the hand. We're dealing with traditional affairs matters, Chair.
I'll put him as number 5. It's a must, he must talk. Yes.
Yeah, he must lead that.
Yes. So let's follow each other on that order. I'll start with it's Honorable Mkalip. I'm making a blunder. It's Adebene.
No, my hand was not up, Chair.
Oh, it's Honorable. It's Honorable Mola, Honorable Mkalipi, Honorable Keza, in that, and Honorable Ngeta. Yes. In that order.
Luthuli.
And Honorable Ntuli. So let me start with Honorable Mola.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. DG, what is the term of office of the traditional leadership? My second question, when was the last training of traditional leaders? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you very much, Chair. DG, we note the decrease in the department, and we would like to get more information because especially we note that on the research policy and legislation and on the institution support and coordination is more affected. And my understanding, DG, is that the reduction that is going to be very much critical and affecting the department is whereby is related to the anticipated reduction in the expenditure of traditional leadership disputes and claims. And if you can get that justification, because I think that is the core work of the committee, of the department, that also cause some concern on your work on daily basis. Also, it also affects the running of the department as such. And I agree when you read on the slides that most of the things is that you can't go and work physically because most of the things, especially when we have to go and meet with people to process those legislation like the COI and the Sun Leadership Act. And so now I believe that that's where the reduction or that's where the money was taken from in order to push on something else. So therefore, what is the justification of this downward revision in that regard? Because the coordination will be affected very, very, very much. And also, what is the justification of the ministry and the management level? Because I can see that they are not affected as such. And also, in terms of the research and policy, because I know that is research, policy, and legislation, but whereby the affected area or the lag between the three is on the legislation, whereby you have to go and consult in terms of physically. So in terms of research and policy, because that one, it can be done through your desktop, it can be done through your laptop in the office, is not affected, because if that one also can be affected, so it means the department is not going to grow. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable Nita.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. My first question, let's first appreciate the presentation by the DDG. My first question, Chair, is on the issue of the handbook for traditional leaders. He is indicating to us that they have not yet finished the process of doing it. It would be proper, Chair, if you could help us on time frames. When are they planning to complete the process, so that we are able as members to follow up on that? To Chair, He's also talking about 8 traditional councils that are still to be established because of the lapse of the time frame for those that are in those positions now. I just want to know if the department has not thought of using other mechanism in terms of having the meetings to set up the traditional council, as we are all saying we are on a new norm. So the new norm is saying you are able to have those meetings virtually and be able to elect such people that are expected. And to Chair, the third one is the training. Also on the issue of training, I would like to know a time frame for them to finalize the training. Again, utilizing the same way of ensuring that they are using the fact that we are in a new norm and make creative measures of ensuring that the training is taking place. The last one, Chair, is on the issue of decrease of budget. I'm worried, Chair. I know that we're in a situation that is very bad in terms of our economy as the country. But in his presentation, he's saying they are also still waiting for Koi and Son to join them. And I'm just thinking aloud, if they are again have to go through the issue of establishing a council as well as training those, how are they going to mitigate on that? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ngita. Honorable Kleza.
Thank you very much, Chair. That leaves me with one question. Now that the honorable members have covered me.
So don't take everything for Honorable Ntuli.
Yes, I won't take everything. It's just one question on the reduction, criminal reduction. As to what impact does the reduction have in terms of the disputes, claims, possible court cases, legal costs, with regards to the reduction of the budget? What impact does it have to what have how have they made sure that they resolve the disputes? What impact will it have to resolve these disputes and court cases and legal costs and so forth? Thank you.
Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Ntuli.
Thank you, Chair. I have something in my mind, which I would like a clarity from the DG. It's concerning about the reduction. If the reduction was taken from the goods and services, how they are going to improve the traditional courts, because there are certain people who haven't got even this tradition, these courts at this present moment. Some of them, they were affected by the storm. In 2017, they were not even been built at this present moment. There are some Amakosi which I know who was affected on that. They are if they are in the court, they are sitting under the trees. So there is a problem out of that. And also this tribal courthouse, when they are going to be built, and then renovation. The other thing is renovation. If I'm not mistaken, last year I took a decision to take the tribal money to repair my traditional court, I spent already, it was about 340,000 out of repairing that, because all those courts, all those traditional courts are not repaired. And then when they are going to start repairing the traditional courts, because really it seems as if it's something which is not it's not happening in this new dispensation. Sometimes the training, what the DG is talking about, when the training is going to take place, because all these years we haven't got any training at all. Sometimes we are breaking the law without knowing that this is a law. It's a contradiction to the a constitution of our country. Or only that. Let me stop there. Chair.
Yes, we knew you were going to raise something, and something to do with traditional courts. Of course, that's gonna be, now that we know the administration of the act is the Department of Justice. But yes, it's our expectations that the traditional affairs must be able to tell us how are they going to work together with the Department of Justice in making sure that thing gets happened. But he's gonna respond to that. Honorable Hadewe, before I raise my issues, I see your hand is up.
No, thank you so much, Chair. Let me say, Honorable Tuli, I think you're very progressive for utilizing your resources to refurbish and renovate traditional within your area. That's very progressive. That's very progressive.
Order, Chair. She's out of order.
Do not mind, Honorable Mkhalipi. Chair, I'm worried on the issue of taking money from other key and paramount programs such as training. We understand the issue of COVID, but one ought to be innovative and adapt. There's a saying that if you don't adapt, you die. We are told that COVID might still be with us for a very long time. So what then will happen to some of these activities if the department cannot adapt quickly and adopt new innovative ideas to implement their program? Are they going to further postpone these activities? I'd like to get an understanding in a sense of that, because money is there. All it needs and all that is required is for them to be innovative and understand that we are dealing with the new normal. So they must gear themselves up to be equal to the task. Are we going to see further a reduction in the near future because of them unable to adapt to the new normal? I'm worried indeed about training. I mean, if they need help, Chair, they must show so that we see as a department, how do you then intervene? But to just cut money without having taken an initiative, at least an attempt to give us a sense and comfort that you have implemented these measures moving forward. At least we need to get that sense, Chair. There are measures in place moving forward to deal with the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. DG, mine is on page 7 of your presentation. I'm looking at this original budget and the slide research policy and legislation. And then I'm trying to look on these issues where this 1.32 at the end comes from in your slide 7. mainly it's on good on services, because on your revised budget, when it comes to policy and legislation, it was 9 million. It still stands at 9 million as it is. It means it's not affected. But then when it comes to the presentation here, you are telling us that you are going to not go, you are going not to do certain things that relates to research and policy. And the only thing that one sees you having decreased on, it's only on the goods and services themselves. That's where the reduction it's amounted for. So then I'm trying to understand the logic behind this, because it's only goods and services, but then in terms of the research and info management, you still live as it is. But on your narrative is from page 9, then you are telling us this is what you're not gonna do. But then in the actual document itself, there seems to be no reduction on research and information management, save for goods and services. And the targets that you are saying you are reconsidering here, to me, as the colleague have said, they've got nothing to do with their goods and services. And then the question that one wants to ask is that then, to what extent will this downward revision on the research policy and legislation program affect the implementation of the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, in particular for the establishment and the operational costs for the Commission on the Khoisan matter? Yes, you have said it here to say then, because the act still needs to be proclaimed in terms of your slide in number 9, but also then to say that so then that's the what issue that one wanted to understand on you. Then the other issue is with regard to the institutional support and coordination program, which this special budget further proposed a 2.1 million decrease to that program. It then means then it's from 99.8 million to 97.6 million. If you recall, in your previous budget, in particular in February, the bulk of the decrease related to the anticipated reduction in expenditure of traditional leadership disputes and claims. Can we then get clarity as to what then now is the justification for this latest downward revision? Then I think Undave Zita Lutuli has also raised a very critical issue. You being also as a department responsible for reporting in this department called Department of Cooperative Governance. I hadn't seen anything in your documents, as Ndave Zita Lutuli was raising, that tell us what support mechanism as the Traditional Affairs Department are you going to support the Department of Justice and Correctional Services in the implementation of the Traditional Courts Act, like you heard what the visitors concerns, because we are mindful of the fact that also in terms of this, there's also this way in the Retro province make allocations to this traditional leadership. But then also there's also some discrepancies in terms of benefits and allowances. And then we are one South Africa. We know the kingdom ships and kingships, they differ per culture and geographical spread. But as a national department, on matters that also then has to deal with uniformity, because like we're saying, all this traditional leadership, they are all in one republic, that's one Republic of South Africa. you find traditional leadership in province X having more benefits than traditional leadership in province Z. And then at the same time, we are one Republic of South Africa. We are not a federal state. And I strongly believe, by virtue that you are also then reporting to this ministry called cooperative governance. When you talk about cooperative governance, it will also mean all sphere of government to cooperate together. So what is the department stance on that one with regard to the issuing of norms and standards that relates to matters that has to deal with the governance of traditional leadership in the country, so that then we can have uniform rules, uniform benefits if need be. We are mindful of the fact that these other things are the sole competence of the province, but one believes that the Department of Traditional Affairs nationally, as the policy department, has to then establish norms and standards to that effect. So those are our takes, DG and Tim. Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Chairperson of the Select Committee, and honourable members of both committees. I'm joined in this briefing by the Secretary of the National House of Traditional Leaders, Babus Tole Jobe, is with us. I'm also joined by our two DDGs, DDG for Research Policy and Legislation, Meshoki Mgaladi, and the DDG for Institutional Support and Coordination, Mashandu. With your permission, chairpersons, before I come in, I would want to ask them to just pick on one or two of the issues that have been raised, and then I'll just come in immediately after them, chairpersons. Starting with Jobe Babstole, if the chairpersons allow.
Okay. Secretary of the National House, I'm told it's your turn now.
Yeah, Chairperson, thank you, and good evening to the committees. And I hope members are safe where they are, like we are safe now. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm going just to take one question.
Can you put your camera on, Babastole? I believe you are not a BPT. We want to see you.
Yes, I think I'm visible now, Chair. Can you see me, Chairperson?
We're only seeing your mouth. Go down a bit. There you go.
All right. Now,
just
okay.
Go down a bit.
Chairperson, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Chairperson, thank you. I'm going only to take one question, Chair, the one on the term of offices of the structures of traditional leaders. I'll concentrate much more on the National House. Chairperson, for the structures term of office is just like the term of office of Parliament. It is 5 years, starting from the Traditional Council to the local House of Traditional Leaders, to the Provincial House of Traditional Leaders, and the National House of Traditional Leaders. Now, in terms of the TKLA, which is Traditional Leadership and Khoisan, Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, once it comes into operation, it requires that all structures must be streamlined. Their term of office must end on the same year, so that the term of office is aligned properly. Therefore, the current term of the National House, which started in 2017, will end in 2022 on the 30th of June 2022. The current National House will cease to exist, and the new National House, which we believe would by then there will be recognized leaders of the Khoisan. They will then form part of the National House, and the provincial houses will have Ama Khoisan, because by then we believe there will be some who shall have been recognized. So the houses will be formed, will be reconstituted in that way. So the term of office is 5 years. The last election was of the national house and provincial houses was in 2017, and it will be on in 2022 again. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Baba Stole. DG, who's next?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let's get just in the order in which the programs were presented. The next program will be research policy and legislation. The deputy DG there is Meshoki Mahaladi. Before she comes in, just to indicate, because in terms of the question that the Honorable Mola asked was about the term of office, there is a term of office for the institutions themselves, the structures, as Babstola has indicated, but not for the traditional leaders as such, because traditional leaders don't have a term of office. It's a lifelong term in a sense, but these are for the structures that get established, the traditional councils, provincial houses, local houses, and so on and so on. But DDG Shoki Mkhaladi, Meshoki, if you could come in.
Good evening, members. Good evening, Chairperson. I did now. Thank you, Chairperson.
You are not, still off. The nation wants to see you as well. You are on live on television.
Yes, I'm saying maybe there is a problem, but I've turned it on. So I don't know what is the problem for it not showing, but I turned it on at the same time when I unmute my mic. So I don't know what is.
Can you check again? Because it shows an empty video and a camera that's closed. Did you block it?
No, or maybe it's my technology. I don't know. Because here it shows that the camera is on, and it shows that the camera is on, and I've unmuted my mic. So I don't know what is the problem.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson, and good evening to the members. I will take the question on the constitution of the traditional councils. The question that was, I'm sorry, Chairperson, I'm sorry.
Can you just switch off that phone completely?
Yes, I did.
And you tell them you are in a meeting, you're at work.
Yes. Okay.
It's an eye opener to everybody whose phones are on now. Ne?
Apologies, Chairperson. Yes. Yeah, I will talk on the question about the constitution of the TCs. That can't we use other means on that, and then I'll also talk on the question on some of the programs within the RPL branch that can't we use other measures. So on the constitution of the TCs, what has happened is that currently there is no enabling legislation to constitute them. The time frames when they were supposed to have been constituted legally, they have lapsed. So we don't have any other legal mechanism to legally constitute the traditional councils. But once the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act has been proclaimed, then we will be able to constitute them. So even if we can think of other means to constitute them, but we need the enabling legislation so that we can constitute them. And on most of the project within the RPL branch, as the DG was presenting, like the documentation, there was a question also on, can't we use other means? So one of the projects that I can talk to is the
documentation of customary laws of succession, which requires that we meet with the royal families and the communities. And the new means of, or the virtual meetings, given the type of stakeholders that we have, or that we need to document some of, to document the customary laws of succession, they will not be feasible for us to do that. Even with the NAMA research is the same thing, because we have checked in the literature and we could see that there is very little literature on the customary role of the NAMA leaders, meaning we had to then go to the NAMA leaders and then also go to the communities in the NAMA communities in order for us to be able to document their customary role. So you need that interaction with them, and it will not be possible for us to do that under the COVID-19 restrictions, like the DG has indicated. So most of our projects, given the type of the stakeholders that we had to work with when we implement these projects, were not going to be possible or feasible under the current conditions. And in terms of those projects that are more to do with implementation of the TKLA, like the establishment of the Commission on Khoisan Matters, is also not possible under the current situation, because we do not have an enabling legislation, like DG has indicated, for us to establish the Commission on Khoisan Matters, but all the preparatory work has been done. And we also had projects on monitoring implementation of the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act. But then, because the act itself has not yet been proclaimed, so we will not be able to monitor its implementation because it has not yet commenced. So those are the reasons more of why and what are we going to do, why we are not continuing with most of the projects within the branch. Some they focus more, or they depend more on the TKLA commencement being proclaimed, while we also have others which need face-to-face meetings with communities and members of the royal families. And under the current conditions of COVID-19, we were not going to be able to implement them. Even if we have this under the CEO and we still have human resources within the department, those were the two main reasons why we cannot be able to implement those projects, because of the dependencies on the TKLA on the other side. And then we have also those group of projects which they need face-to-face with the communities. Thank you, DG. I think thanks, DG. And
thank you, chairpersons. Thank you, DDG. The next one is Mashando, the DDG for institutional support and coordination. I think she was struggling with connectivity earlier. I'm not sure if she has been able to succeed. DDG Shandu, are you with us?
DG.
Chairperson?
With due respect, you should have checked there than to tell us what you're telling us now, whether she's connected or not. Please.
Okay, no. Now I take.
If it's not connected, you must take the answers as an accounting.
No problem, Chairperson. We'll indeed do that. I think she was on and off when I was checking the connection there. I think maybe just to start with some of the issues that relate to the research policy legislation, that the questions that were raised before we move on to the area of institutional support coordination. Chairperson, you raised the issue about norms and standards for dealing with differences in benefits. Now, that's where this work on the handbook comes in, because what the handbook does is the handbook on the institution of traditional leadership, which then will deal particularly with those things that the Remuneration Commission doesn't deal with. Members would know that the remuneration deals with salary levels. So when it comes to salary levels for all the traditional leaders, they are the same because they are determined through recommendations that are made by the Remuneration Commission on the Independent Commission on the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers. So in that respect, then those are the same, and there are four categories in the main. There's the one for kings and queens, there's the one for principal traditional leaders, there's the one for senior traditional leaders, and there's the one for headmen and headwomen. So those are determined by the Independent Commission on the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers. Of course, the Commission also makes determinations on areas that relates to chairpersons of houses, chairperson of the National House, deputy chairperson of the House, provincial houses, and so on and so on. But there are these other things that those determinations do not speak to. There are some proposals that were made previously. This relates to things such as the staff that will support a king or a senior traditional leader, for example. That speak to the issues that relate to vehicles, that relates to issues such as travel and accommodation, and so on and so on. So the handbook, it's supposed to then deal with that and make proposals on how that aspect can be dealt with. Now, I should indicate that the actual handbook itself, the draft handbook, has been done. So the intention was that what we will focus on during the course of this financial year is to then ensure exhaustive consultations on that draft handbook, so that we will then consult not only with provincial governments and so on, but also consult with the institution of traditional leadership itself at various levels where it exists. So what we need to do is to make sure that we take that process to its logical conclusion. Because, for example, if we say that a king will have 5 staff members, that process should be agreed to with provinces, because ultimately it is provinces that are going to be responsible for footing the bill and all the other things that go with that. We just think that some of the consultations can take place through virtual means. For example, consultations with provincial governments. That can take place through virtual means. But we just concerned that when we take it further now, beyond the level of government officials, that's where it might be tricky to conduct virtual consultations. So we are saying that from our side, we will try to take it as far as possible. But we're just concerned that making that as part of the APP, where we say we'll have concluded the consultations and will have obtained approval, whilst there is this unknown ahead of us in terms of moving beyond provincial administrations, that space of consultations within the institution of traditional leadership, that is where the concern lies. And I think maybe just to also deal with the issue that the Honourable Chair is raising about a reduction in goods and services as it relates to the aspects of research and so on. The goods and services, that's where the traveling and accommodation comes in, because the people who have to do the research will then have to travel. They will have to travel to various areas. There's ways, because it is primarily for purposes of them traveling and accommodating them and catering for the meetings that they'll be holding and so on and so on. And that's why then you see the bulk of the reduction being under, all the reduction being under the area of goods and services. It's for that kind of purpose, particularly in terms of the meetings that need to take place. The same applies to this work that needs to be done on compilation of customary laws of succession and so on, because the team has to travel to the communities so that there will then be meetings where they convene different members of the royal families. They travel from different areas. They must come and meet with our teams, have several meetings with them. And that's where the issue comes in. It's under goods and services. And that is the explanation. I think, Honorable Chair, you also raised the issue, and I think Ndabezitha also raised it, Nkosli on traditional courts. The Chair quite correctly pointed out that the traditional courts processes are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Now, there is outstanding work there. The outstanding work primarily is around the traditional courts bill. What our department did through the facilitation of our minister, because there was a period where the traditional courts bill was tabled in the National Assembly, and then it was stuck because there were questions where agreement was not being reached. So our minister at the time then convened a consultative session between Contralesa, the National House of Traditional Leaders, members of the Justice Portfolio Committee, members of our own portfolio, all the relevant stakeholders, to say, let's try to see if we can find each other. And those discussions took place. And I think one of the main achievements of that engagement was that at least then within the National Assembly, the traditional courts bill was then endorsed. But now it has moved to the next step, which is the NCOP. So the expectation, which is what we are having now with our own customary initiation bill, we see the NCOP, we see provinces continue to ask us to come and brief provinces on the customary initiation bill, and this has been done virtually. So we expect that with the traditional courts bill, similar arrangements can be made so that we can work with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development for that purpose. But that is in terms of what is it that we have tried to do from our side. And I think that was a groundbreaking facilitation that our minister did when all the stakeholders relevant to the discussion on the traditional courts bill were brought together. Maybe just a general comment, honorable members, that I should make on the reduction. The reduction, if honorable members would recall that we've got the 500 billion fiscal support package being announced by the president. 130 billion of that was supposed to come from the baselines of departments. So then discussions had to take place between ourselves and National Treasury. So the starting point was that there has to be a reduction. So where do we reduce? In fact, in reality, if you look at what happened, there was even supposed to be a higher reduction on the budget of DTA. But during those discussions that we had, the amount kept going lower because we said, no, here, please don't, here, please don't, here, please don't. I remember at some stage there was even an issue about the CRL Rights Commission budget to say, shouldn't we go there? And we said, no. So I'm just raising this general point so that when we talk about justification for the reduction, it is understood within that context that a certain reduction had to take place. So how do we justify the level at which we are now? What we said was that because the work that we do involves a lot of traveling, when research gets done and capacity building and so on and so on. Well, if you then realize that there's these restrictions where some of these things might not be able to happen. So if it happens under goods and services, then we'll then have to find a way to work around that. I know that the Honorable Hadebe with an H raised the issue about shouldn't we find new ways in which the training can be provided. That's the discussion that we are having now. We're having a partnership with LG COGTA, where we are saying the initial ideas that we had in our partnership of the training that was going to be provided, they are not going to work now. We have to think differently about how the training is going to take place, because getting people gathering in big groups and so on, that is not going to be possible. So the discussions that we are having now with our partners in LG COGTA is to say, let's rethink this. That's why we are saying on our APP, we will have to come out with a program of capacity building that will have finished developing by the end of this financial year, but which takes into consideration these new circumstances under which we operate, because it might just be that we go into the new financial year, we may still have the challenges that we're still having in terms of gatherings and so on. Honorable Mkhaliphi raised the issue about disputes and claims and the reductions that are being effected here and what the thinking is. If we look at the kinds of disputes and claims that we are having in the sector, there are those that relate to the level of kings and queens. And then there are those that relate to the lower levels. Now, in terms of legislation, the president recognizes kings and queens, but provinces, the premiers recognize the levels below that. So the approach that we are taking is, let's increasingly make sure that when it comes to the levels below kings and queens, it is the provinces that play a leading role there, for two reasons. Firstly, just in terms of legislation, the national sphere is not empowered, actually. Secondly, just in terms of a resourcing perspective, it becomes difficult. And of course, the provinces are much closer to the ground when it comes to these areas of principal traditional leadership, senior traditional leadership, and so on. So we are saying that working much more closely with our provincial counterparts, they will have to play a leading role when it comes to dispute that relates to levels below kingship and queenships. One of the projects that we have retained, we presented it to the committees earlier, and we have not removed that, is that on the framework on the resolution of disputes and claims. That one we are retaining. And we are saying that we'll continue to work with provinces in terms of that framework to make sure that we assist them to the extent possible and also monitor to the extent to which they are monitoring, they are implementing that framework. That is so that we don't have a situation where we have these claims where the Minister of COGTA is cited as a respondent, or the President is cited as a respondent, but on a matter where actually they don't have any authority at all. And that is just the attempt that we're trying to make sure that there are more efficiencies because of the resource limitations when it comes to the handling of disputes and claims. There was a question raised by the Honourable Minister about when are we planning to complete the handbook, and I've indicated already that from our side the draft has been done. What is outstanding is consultations, which will then lead to the approval after the inputs emanating from the consultations have been incorporated into the handbook. We will continue to take the consultations as far as we can under the current limitations, so that if it is possible for us to conclude it, we will conclude it. But we are just concerned about that space where the consultations have to go beyond provincial administrations. That virtual means might not be possible. I think maybe just to note the issues that Ndabezitha raised around infrastructure, renovations. This past year, we engaged in a process where we're working with particularly colleagues in provinces, but also the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure on guidelines for the renovations of infrastructure for the institution of traditional leadership. I think we've made enough progress in that work around the guidelines. The only tricky part, of course, is that DTA doesn't have the resources to effect the renovations. But what the guidelines do, they then just introduce ideas on how the process of the renovations and the maintenance can be can be coordinated. Our concern was that, for instance, if you take a province like Limpopo, where last year the MEC, earlier this year the MEC announced that about 3, 4, 5 traditional councils, there will be infrastructure erected there. Our concern was that once the infrastructure has been erected, after that, there isn't clarity as who takes responsibility for maintaining that infrastructure, which is then the reason why you end up in this situation where the infrastructure is dilapidated once it has been erected. So the guidelines seeks to clarify that, so that there's a common understanding going forward when it comes to these areas of maintenance. Perhaps just the last issue that one wants to raise in terms of the questions that honorable members have raised. Just broadly speaking on this issue of training. There is training that is done at the level of provinces. We admit that training is uneven. There is training that happens at our level through workshops and so on. And we admit that training does not go far enough because the needs out there are massive. The nature of the program that we are developing now is such that we want to cover as many of them as possible. Firstly, there is a training program on induction of new members of traditional councils. And it will have a number of modules. The only thing we'll have to focus on is to make sure that it can be provided in means other than physical presence on the ground, because that's the challenge that we are going to have to live with for a long time to come. So it will consist of all the different modules that need to be included. But we have said to our counterparts in provinces that to the extent possible, do not stop with the training, that you should continue to engage on the training. But from our side, we are focusing on this induction program. In addition to that is the integrated capacity building program that will go beyond the induction to make sure that support is provided to the institution of traditional leadership as a whole. But the new thinking here, as the Honorable Hadebe has raised, is new mode of delivery of the training program. That's what we had not factored into the process when we came to the committee earlier in the year. And that is the rethink that we are having at the moment, to make sure that we will still be able to provide some kind of support and capacity building beyond the traditional means of face-to-face. Those are the issues, Chairperson, that I have noted, including those that my colleagues, the two colleagues, have been able to respond to. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. Colleagues, do we have follow-ups?
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
Can I know who wants to make follow-ups? Kalipi?
Nkosi Luthuli.
Inkosi Luthuli. Who else? Who else? DG, while the colleagues are still preparing their follow-up questions, I hope whatever you are doing, you are aware we are on level 3 of the lockdown, where in meetings of not more than 50 people and conferences are allowed. I'm raising this also by virtue of my experience. I'm attending most of the district command councils here in the province. And then the representation of traditional leaders leaves much to be desired. And when you ask why are traditional leaders not attending the district command council, is because they don't have gadgets. So if this is the new norm, we're going to live on with what mechanisms have you put in place as the norms and standards department to make sure that traditional leaders are then also supported in terms of them having the necessary tools of trade? I don't see it coming here.
So that's the issue that one wanted to raise. Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thanks for the response, DG, but I was not, I don't think we have covered when I asked specifically in terms of the institution support and coordination. And I also said to you that what I believe that most of your work is also determined by this institution support and coordination. And if you remember very well, it's a cause for concern in this committee whenever you come to make presentation of any nature, to say that at a lower level, as Nkosulu Tulu was also talking about those concerns, it's a mere effect of the coordination purposes. But if your budget is reduced in that aspect, how are you going to be affected? Because automatically it will affect also the people on the ground, on the coordination side. And to remember when we raised the issue of the traditional leadership vis-a-vis the programs that talks to the GPV, also to talk to the women in general, in terms of the patriarchy. So if that coordination by the institution is going to be affected, I don't hear you coming very clear. How are you planning to manage around that? Because there are issues that are specifically that we always raised in this committee, especially when it comes to women and patriarchy, and the traditional leadership should play a very important role, especially at rural areas. So please comment on that one. The second issue, when I was listening to you talking about claims and disputes, you also explain here to say that there are two types. One is also dealt with at a presidential level. And then when we are dealing with the dispute of some of the lower levels. Please take us through on the issue that all was reported in the media. And I think this committee, this joint committee is serving a very, very, very interest on the matter of Inkos, of Ubaba Utali, Ubelikai, Darinjen, the issue that was on the media. And we also saw that certificate when he was given back his powers by the Premier of Eastern Cape, the role of the department on that one. Just to have that understanding as the committee, because it also falls within your department. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. It's Honorable Nkosulu Tuli.
Thank you, Chair. On that point of a dispute, what I would like to know, as the DG says, that he's the one, the department normally intervene. How the intervention take place to the, for argument's sake, on a dispute for the chieftainship. Let's say the government, I'm talking about specific, in KZN, there are some tribal, there are some traditional council which the government is intervening, but still there is no way forward. Otherwise, in these days, they appointed somebody who is outside, saying that he must take over the chieftainship, whereas this was insisted by the department themselves without the consultation of a certain of the traditional authority, including Umdeni and others. Umdeni were appointed somebody, and the department is appointing somebody. How to intervene on such matters like that? Because sometimes it's not in your attention. Secondly, we were talking about the salary, salaries for as in Izindunas. From the day Izinduna was traditional council was appointed, there is amount which was outstanding for Izinduna as a back pay. that back pay has not yet been given to Izinduna. When are you going to intervene on that so that these Izinduna must get their money because they need it? Otherwise, what I knew in KZN, they refused to go to a traditional council election just because of that. So now I think really I'm not satisfied about the intervention which is done by the national government to the provincial so that everything must run smooth. Thank you very much. Sure.
Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to the honourable members that have raised the follow-up questions. With your permission, Chair, I will just start from the last questions Ndabezitha has raised. One is about Izinduna in KwaZulu-Natal, and I'm specifically saying in KwaZulu-Natal because this is the area where the outstanding payments have been reported to us. In the other provinces, we have not been made aware of any outstanding payments when it comes to the salaries of Izinduna. Just to indicate that we are aware of that, the MEC of COGTA in the province has had a meeting with our minister on the matter, and there were agreements on some further work that needed to be done on the part of the province, with the understanding that once that work has been done, there will be a regrouping between ourselves and the MEC and his team in KZN to see how we can take the process forward. We are aware that what happened was that for the benefit of members of the committee chairpersons, previously when the Independent Commission on the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers was making recommendations on the salaries of public office bearers, the echelon of Izinduna was not included. So that was included a little bit later in legislation. But once it was included, as other provinces then began to take the process forward, there were challenges of a budgetary nature in KZN, which led to the delays that Ndabezitha is referring to. So as a result, that then contributed to an accumulation of a backlog in the salaries, although the payments are happening now, but the problem is what the backlog from the earlier years when these decisions were made. So we're having those discussions are taking place. The province has brought them to the attention of the minister and the financial implications thereof. To the best of my knowledge, Ndabezitha, the issue is not whether they should pay or not. The issue is how do they then stagger it in such a manner that they will be able to afford it, because it's a lot of money that we are talking about at this stage. But those discussions are taking place, and I think at an appropriate time, once the interactions between our minister and the MEC as a follow-up engagement as per the agreement that was reached between the two of them has taken place, we'll be able to provide an update on that issue. On the issue relating to disputes, I think what I was trying to explain is that because in terms of legislation, the president is the one who recognizes kingships and queenships, firstly. And then the president is also the one who recognizes the incumbents. So for example, once a kingship has been recognized in terms of legislation, the royal family must then make a recommendation to the president to say who should be the incumbent that the president recognizes. Now, if you look at the types of disputes that we are having, it will be at our level, it will be a dispute about are we or are we not a kingship? That's the kind of dispute that we'll be having, where they will say, no, but we want to be recognized as a kingship. and there will be others that will be saying, no, but you have historically been under us. You can't be an independent kingship. So those kinds of dispute, those are the ones that are at the level of national, because it is the president who then finally then recognizes a kingship or queenship. And then once the family has then agreed on who they should recommend to the president for recognition as a king or a queen, that's where again we come in at national. I'm raising this because this is the second type of dispute that we will have, which is like we're having now with Amampondomise. Members of the committee might know that there is a new kingship that has been recognized in the Eastern Cape, which is Amampondomise. And the president has signed the minute to a proclamation to recognize them. But where the problem is now, within the family, there isn't agreement on who should be recognized as the incumbent. So you have one group in the family writing to the president saying recognize Sbanban. And then you have another family group saying recognize Sbanban. And that's where now you have an area of dispute. Now, this, I'm giving this as an illustration because it somehow reflects what happens at the lower level as well, in terms of what Ndabezitha referred to as chieftainship, which in legislation is called a senior traditional leadership, where the power to recognize, the authority to recognize a senior traditional leadership and a senior traditional leader rests with the province. So it's a premier. So where the family then must then make recommendations to the premier to say, recognize so and so. And then it does happen there that the premier then receives two proposals. One part of the family says recognize this one. The other part of the family says recognize this one. We do take the point, and Ndabezitha is raising, that it might be that the family said recognize so and so, but out of the blue, there seems to be a decision going in a different direction. It might be happening, but that's what happens at the provincial level. To the extent possible, when that matter comes to our attention, what we do on the basis of intergovernmental relations, usually the minister will write to the MEC and the premier and say, this matter has been brought to my attention. What are the problems? How are you dealing with it? And so on and so on. So that ultimately it will be through intergovernmental relations that the proposals coming from our level can then be taken into consideration at the level of the provinces. But certainly when it comes to the national, when it's chieftainship, sorry, when it is kingship and queenship, we rely on the recommendation of the royal family. There wouldn't be an instance where the royal family says, Ndabezitha Luthuli is the one that must be recognized, and the president recognizes somebody else, because there has to be supporting documentation that goes to the president for a decision to be made to say, we are recognizing so and so. The problem is when there are two recommendations, and that's where now we have a dispute. So I would then indicate that at the level of senior traditional leadership, where there is that particular concerns that Ndabezitha is raising, as it gets brought to the attention of our minister, the minister then uses intergovernmental relations processes, but with the understanding that she doesn't have the authority to overrule the province. But what she does is through intergovernmental relations to then facilitate engagement with the relevant stakeholders, so that some kind of agreement can be reached. Unfortunately, some of them go to the courts, and we are cited. The president is cited, the minister is cited, which is fine to the extent that it relates to kingship and queenship. The difficulty is when we get cited when it relates to senior traditional leaders in an area where you don't have authority at all. But what can we do? Once you are cited, and there is some involvement that you have to facilitate there. So I think on the particular issues, Honourable Chairpersons, that Ndabezitha is raising, I think those areas that when Ndabezitha is aware of these kinds of concerns about the role that the province is playing, we are available if those specifics can be provided to us, so that intergovernmental relations processes can be facilitated, but with the understanding that the authority doesn't lie with the minister, unfortunately. The authority doesn't lie with the president either when it comes to the levels below kings and the levels below queens. I've noted the follow-up question by Honorable Kalipi as well in terms of coordination at local level. Perhaps I think maybe what one should indicate at this stage is that in the earlier APP that was presented, tabled in Parliament and presented to the committee, there is a critical project that we have not removed, and in the presentation tonight we haven't indicated that we are removing it, is that of the involvement of the institution of traditional leadership in the district development model. That one remains, and we have said that through our scoping processes, out of the districts that we have, 30 of them have the institution of traditional leadership. And our plan in terms of our APP is to work with the local houses of traditional leadership, because the local houses are the equivalent structure at the district level, so that they actively participate in processes relating to the implementation of the district development model, so that all these other areas of concern that relate to their coordination, that also relate to the critical issues that Honorable Mkalibi has raised about women participation, gender-based violence, and all those kinds of things, are built into the work that gets done at the district level, because the approach that government is taking is that the district then becomes the entry point geographically for coordinating all the efforts that need to be implemented. Of course, there is a difficult follow-up question the Honorable Mkalibi has raised about what is happening with Abatembu at the moment.
You said you are responsible for that. When responding to the question, you need to respond to this one. Because in your own admission earlier, you said you are responsible for kingship. So respond to the question.
Yes. I think my own words are coming back to haunt me now.
They're catching up with you now.
They are catching up with me indeed. What is happening with Abatembu, Honorable Chairpersons, is that after Kumkan Bueleka Dalinjebu went to jail, the province appointed an acting king. Now,
but it's the competency of the president, am I wrong?
No. That's the point I was coming to. The appointment of acting kings and queens is not the competency of national, is the competency of provincial. The president comes in terms of the recognition of the actual king. But if there are things that happen in between, for example, there has to be a regent and so on, national and the president, that's not their competency. I see in diversity.
Which section of the act did you? Refer us to the section of the act now.
I'm saying this because the law now, as it stands, doesn't speak at all to acting appointments. It's the provincial pieces of legislation that speak to acting appointments. So if you were looking at the Eastern Cape Traditional and Governments Leadership Framework Act, it will speak to the issue of acting appointment. Our legislation at national level, and perhaps it might be seen as a weakness, it doesn't speak to that. It just speaks to recognition. So it's the provincial pieces of legislation that then provide for the appointment of acting. So if you look at the acting in the Eastern Cape and indeed in other provinces, I mean, we just come out of a difficult case around the Bapedi kingship, where King KK's Kukuni was acting for a long time. The appointment was done by the province. The acting appointment was done by the province. So similarly with Abatembu, the acting appointment was done by the province and not by national. Even the provisions which speak to circumstances under which the acting is withdrawn, they are contained in the provincial legislation, not in national legislation. So the report we got was that the province said the conditions in their own legislation governing the appointment of acting did not apply anymore. And therefore, there was no justification for the acting arrangement to continue. That is the one side of the issues that the province raised. So then they said, we will therefore then proceed with the process of terminating the acting arrangements. But I'm reluctant, Honorable Chair, because at the moment now, this is a matter that is before the courts. This is a matter that is before the courts, because what has happened is that the acting king has then approached the courts to say the manner in which the acting was terminated was not fair, it was unlawful. And so that's a matter that is going to serve before the courts. And I'm just reluctant to go into the details of a matter that is being handled before the court. But just to emphasize that it is the provincial legislation that was then used for that purpose, because the national legislation makes no provision at all for the appointment of acting kings and acting queens. Even other provinces, the Honorable Chairperson, if you look at their provincial pieces of legislation, they speak to that. They make provision for the appointment. Yes.
DG, while you're there, what does the national legislation now provides in the situation of what Honorable Mkhalipi has raised? Because now you're saying this is the province that has done that. Tell us, what is the ideal situation? What would be the ideal situation under the circumstances? You as the custodian of the national legislation.
Chair, can I add on your question, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that the DG is saying the matter is sub judice, but are we not privy to the conditions and provisions for acting that were imposed then, so that we get an understanding what were the conditions?
Yes, we must get it.
DG, respond to the questions of members.
I'm here, Chairperson. What happens and what happened in this particular case? I see Ndabezit is continuing to. What happens in this particular case is that the province acted on a recommendation that came, or recommendations that came from the royal family at the time, to say, in the absence of Kumkani, this is the person we are putting forward or these are the persons we are putting forward for consideration in terms of acting appointments. So in terms of the conditions themselves, the way it has been explained is that you act when the person is not there. That is the main consideration. And so the issue is that you acted when the person was not there. Now the person is here. So can the acting justifiably continue? And that was the question. And so the feedback we got was that, well, it can't continue because in terms of our own legislation, the acting takes effect when the rightful incumbent is not there. The rightful incumbent is here.
Which legislation, DG?
It's the provincial legislation.
Framework or
it
the
is
national
provincial.
Framework?
It is the provincial framework, Chairperson, because the national framework doesn't deal with acting appointments. So it is the provincial framework that dealt with
the national
issue.
framework doesn't deal with the absence of the king as well.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. What the national framework
only
provides
deals with the recognition only.
Well, it deals with at least two related things, Chairperson. It deals with recognition, but it also makes provision for the removal. And it says if for reasons that the family, royal family, will have been considered, because once again, the royal family, which will have made a recommendation to the president to recognize, then it is the royal family that comes back again to say, Mr. President or Madam President, this nomination that we have done, we want to withdraw it. and we want to make another recommendation. And that's what the national legislation provides for, that then the president then is able to act with the advice of the Minister of COGTA. But in this space where is acting. So for example, even where in the unfortunate situation where the king passes away.
Yes.
National legislation says that it is the royal family that once again must then decide and then say to the president, this is the person that must be recognized. But what the royal family can do before they go to the president for recognition is for a regent, for an acting arrangement. That they do with the province, not the national. But once they've made that decision, they can either go to the province for a regent to be appointed or go to the to national for a new person to be recognized. So I think, Chairperson, that's...
Are you able to read that clause for us? Are you having the bill with the act with you there?
The one...
Because the issue that Honorable Mkhalipi is raising is with regard in the absence of the king rather than death.
Yes.
You are saying there's a lacuna in the legislation.
At national level.
Whereas the president, on the recommendation of the ministers, the appointing authority. So you are saying the legislation is quiet on that one.
When it comes to in the absence of the king.
Except death, any other circumstances, the king can be ill-deposed, all those other stuff, unable to perform his responsibility, or the queen inability to perform her task. So there's a lacuna in terms of the national legislation to that effect.
Yes, it says the royal family must come back. So the royal family must then come back and say, we recommend as follows to the president, but not for an acting. Not from an acting. So the royal family might come back so if you look at our own Framework Act, it deals with recognition of kings and queens, and it deals with removal of kings and queens. That is provided for in Part 2 of our Act. It deals with their recognition and their removal.
Nothing on the incapacity of the king or the queen.
Because if it's incapacity, that then leads to removal. Then it is the royal family that must then make that recommendation. Baba Sole is here, the expert on these matters. I hope that I'm not misrepresenting the institution.
Baba Sole, come in. Baba Sole.
No. Chairperson, I think DG has summarized it very well. The issue of traditional leadership, be it the king, be it the principal, be it the senior traditional leader, is dependent on the royal family. It is the royal family that is the one to decide on who is the king, who is not the king, who is the regent, who is the acting, it's a royal family. That is why Chair was saying the structure that must support the incumbent is the royal family. It is the one that must always be there for the incumbent. And it is the royal family that must make sure that the incumbent correctly does his or her work accordingly. It is not someone else but the royal family. That is why Chair was saying, to a certain extent, you find there are some practices that are new, that are done by a traditional leader, is because there's a sort of a lapse in the royal family in terms of how to bring up an heir apparent. So the whole thing will indicate it is the royal family that decides who government can't take action without the royal family. Royal family is the core of all these things. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah, I think we'll need another day to deal with this. Honorable Kalipi.
Chairperson? Yes, Chair.
Who's calling the chair?
Yeah, I'm still agreeing.
I think it's Honorable Ngita. Is it Honorable Ngita?
It's Miss Mokhaladi.
Oh,
yes.
Now, Honorable Mkhalipi, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was saying, Chair, I agree with you. We'll need more time to clarify these issues in terms of the Act because it's very confusing. Tola is emphasizing on the issue of the royal family, but the subject that we are discussing is also in court because of that confusion that is brought by the family itself. So therefore, as a committee, I think we must be empowered to understand clearly what happens when there's a dispute within the family, as Ubabul was alluding to that fact.
And let's also
And then
understand.
I was very happy, Chair, when we were directing the Act, the National Legislation Act, also the Provincial Legislation Act, in order for us as a committee to be equipped by these issues, because it becomes a problem whereby we're a member of this portfolio committee, but there's a dispute at a lower level where you reside, and you can't even give a perspective because we are clueless as well. I agree 100%, Chair, that we need time.
Yes, DG. I think then we were going to schedule a meeting when you must come and brief us also on all these provincial framework acts, because ourselves also operate at district level, we operate where there are indonors, there are senior traditional leaders, and there are chiefs, there are kings. So it's your responsibility with the team. Miss Mukhaladi.
Thanks,
not covered by our resolution on these matters.
I think I am covered, but I just wanted to indicate that DG was correct to say in the current legislation, the issue of the appointment of the regent or the acting king or queen resides with the premiers and is silent on that aspect in the national legislation. But when you go to the TKLA, the one that we're still waiting for its commencement, that part of the appointment of the regent is there and is very clear under section 12, 1A and B, as compared to in the current legislation. So I just wanted to say we are addressing it, but not all the issues that have been raised, but only that one of the appointment of the regent is that part is addressed in the TKLA. Thanks, Chairperson.
Okay, so we are closing this matter on this way to say you must come and brief us soon. And Baba's told you'll also become very critical on this matter, so that we then will schedule a briefing on this matter. DG, you have not yet responded on the issue of the new norm and how are you going to support traditional leaders. I raised an issue that we are on level 3 of the lockdown.
Yes, Chairperson. Indeed, I was going to come to that that issue that you raised. This matter was raised with colleagues in provinces, and it was also raised at the level of the National Coronavirus Coordinating Committee. So the agreement was that there should be representation and participation of the institution. So, for example, even if you look at the national level, the National Coronavirus Coordinating Committee now, as we speak, the National House of Traditional Leaders is represented there. So the chairperson and the deputy chairperson participate. The report that we have received going lower down in terms of provinces is that in some provinces and in some districts, they have been able to do that as well. But we are aware that, again, based on the reports that we have received, that it is not even. It's not an even arrangement across all districts and across all provinces. Chairperson?
In all the districts in my province, none of them are attending, and they are raising the issue of them not having resources to attend.
Yes, Chairperson. I know that in Limpopo, that's in terms of the report that we got. So I was just avoiding mentioning provinces. That in fact, in terms of districts, in some provinces, the reports that we have received is that this has not been achieved as well. So it's a matter that we assist with, Chairperson, in engagements that we are continuing to have with our counterparts in provinces. We are aware that some of them have also raised the issue of constraints, but we are exploring this matter further so that one way or another, because if there is an agreement reached that there should be representation in these structures, but the representation is only in writing because practically the means to participate are not there, then that doesn't serve any purpose. So it's a matter, Chairperson, that we commit to pursue with our counterparts in provinces, because as you correctly point out, it's a new norm. Things are going to be like this in a long time to come. And we just have to find ways in which we accommodate each other and assist each other so that the institution of traditional leadership can actively participate, even at district level in Limpopo.
It also applied to council meetings. Now that councils are meeting virtually. So those traditional leaders who are representative in councils, they are not attending council meetings by virtue of them not having the necessary resources.
We take note of that, Chairperson. We'll also put that in the kitty in our discussions with our counterparts.
So when do we get feedback on that one? Because this is ongoing and it's happening.
Because we have our own technical MINMEC meetings, I'll just check, Honorable Chair, when the next one is coming. I know there is one that is coming tomorrow, but because on this one we have not given provinces enough time to all prepare reports on this matter. I think if the committee could just allow us to give provinces a bit of time to prepare their reports on this matter for our next technical MINMEC meeting, and then we'll be able to come back to the committee probably early August. Once we have had the provinces have prepared their reports, we have debated them at our own technical MINMEC, and then we'll then be in a better position to come and report back to the portfolio committee and select committee.
DG, August is too far. We want our traditional leadership to participate in all these organs of state power, where it's legislated. Can we give you 2 weeks to give us the status report on this matter? On all this matter in terms of provinces, which municipalities, we're gonna give you 2 weeks to collect that data. By virtue that you are working and then you've got footprints in all provinces, even in all the districts that we know. So give us that info within 2 weeks. On the other issue, how you're going to resource them, then that's what we're gonna wait that feedback into, because now we're going to constituency period. We need that info. We don't want to be shocked as and when we visit traditional leaders. This is the things that we're getting, like what is currently happening. Now that some of us, we are all here at home, all of us. So these are the things that we're encountering on a daily basis. So we'll give you so that you can give us a status report first. This is the status and how you intend to address that, then you're gonna use that. I was raising it that in line with this to say we are in level 3. You know, you might be working with minimum staff, but that doesn't deter you as long as you follow all. As long as kids are going to school, DG, it means your official also can also do their work. Because for other officials, it looks like it's a complete shutdown. Some don't even go to work. We know this, even though their conditions allow them to do that. So basically, that's what we want, because life must go on. This constituency of traditional leadership still need to be serviced by your good selves. That's the message that we are bringing along. I should think, colleagues, we still have to take MISA. We need to end it here. Yes, then we'll produce a report. Chairperson of the NCOP, I should think we need to end it here with DTA so that we were able to take MISA presentation. Misa, can you load your presentation?
In the background.
Thank you and good evening, honorable chairpersons and members.
To the portfolio committee on tourism.
I'm going to take you
We also
through
take this opportunity to
our
welcome
presentation.
the department
Which is
led
Can you
very
by
brief.
introduce yourself to the members?
both the minister,
Okay,
Honorable
my name is Mapatana Komo, and I'm the DDG responsible for IDMS in MISA. And I am currently the acting CEO, as our CEO
Is
is
he responsible for what? Mekomu?
okay, infrastructure, delivery management support. I was just recently appointed in MISA in January. So I'm currently acting on behalf of the CEO, who has a bereavement and is on leave. May I confirm that the presentation is showing on the screen, Honorable Chair?
We're still waiting for it to load.
Okay, it's showing on my screen. So may you please just alert me if it's showing?
We'll do that.
Otherwise, I can ask Secretariat to show it on the screen because they also have the presentation.
Secretariat, help. May you please assist?
Okay, I see the presentation is on the screen, Honorable Chair.
Yes. You
Okay,
can proceed.
thank you. Thank you very much. So the presentation is very brief. As I've indicated, we're just going to give a little bit of background and introduction, and then just talk about the adjustment that has been effected on the MISA budget for the current financial year, and the impact of that budget reduction in our APP for the year, and just reflect briefly on some of the changes or reviews that we are proposing on our APP. So if you go to the next slide, I'm not going to dwell much on the background and introduction, but just to reiterate that this budget adjustment has resulted in the reduction of the MISA's allocation for the 2020-2021 financial year with a value of 5.982 million. So in light of this reduction, we have initiated that we need to review our strat plan and APP so that we can accommodate this adjustment. So some preliminary indications are that the reduction will adversely affect MISA's ability to achieve some of the performance targets and some of the indicators in our APP. So this presentation seeks to highlight to the committee the impact of that budget adjustment on the APP and the strategic plan. So if you go to the next slide, the next slide just reflects the MISA's allocation for the 2020-2021 financial year and the subsequent financial years over the MTF. So if you see the change in our MTEF allocations over the 3 years, 5% for the current financial year, 5% for the next financial year, and then lastly 4% for the 2022-2023 financial year, which is quite insignificant. And as you can see, that the bulk of our budget goes to the COE as well as and very little goes to goods and services. If you go to the next slide, this is how now the adjustment to our allocation in response to the COVID-19 requirements to our budget has resulted in. So we have reduced our budget by a total of 5.9 million, which has then resulted in our budget, our baseline being adjusted from 359 million to 353 million. As we can see over the 3 financial years, I mean over the MTF, this is how our budget is going to be affected. And as I have indicated before, the bulk of our budget is actually on cost of employment, and then very little is on goods and services. And if you go to the next slide, we're just reflecting on the impact of this budget adjustment on our strategic plan, as well as our annual performance plan. And that we have commenced with the review of our strategic plan and APP in light of COVID-19. And that there's preliminary indications on our strategic plan and APP review process that show that the budget adjustment will not impact the strategic plan, but will, however, have an impact on the annual performance plan. So specifically, this adjustment is going to affect only 3 output indicators in the approved APP, and I'll take you through those in the next slide. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So under program 2, which is technical support services, under the outcome efficiency in infrastructure management, we have 2 indicators, output indicators that are going to be affected through the budget adjustment. And the first one is the number of artisans placed in municipalities. As you know, this is one of the activities that MISA undertakes in terms of building capacity in municipalities. So what then this means is that we are not going to be able to proceed with this indicator as a result of the revision and the reduction in our budget allocation. And then the second one is the water and wastewater process controllers that we also place in municipalities, where we had a target of 50 of them that we were planning to place, to train and place. But as a result of the reduction in our budget, we will not be able to achieve this, these 2 indicators. So we are then proposing that we remove the 2 indicators from our 2020 and 2021 APP as a result. And then if you go to the next slide, under program 3, which is IDMS, still under the same outcome, we had an indicator of the number of feasibility studies conducted to address the misalignment of bulk water and reticulation in prioritized water services authorities. Now, what we are proposing is that we review and not remove the indicator. We review the indicator such that we don't conduct any new feasibility studies, because that also requires some resources, which unfortunately we will not be able to do because of the budget adjustment. And rather, we support water services authorities to address the misalignment of bulk water and reticulation. And we are specifically looking at those that we supported in the previous financial year to develop to conduct the feasibility studies, where we identified certain projects that need to be prepared, prioritized, budgeted for in order to address the misalignment. And if you go to the last slide, which is recommendations, we are then recommending that the portfolio committee and the standing committee note the adjustment to the MISA allocation for the 2020-2021 financial year and the resultant impact on our current budget, and that the committee notes the process of reviewing our 5-year strategic plan and current APP that will result in the tabling of the APP. And that's the end of our presentation. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Colleagues, can I see a show of hands?
Yes, Chair. Kalipi.
Kalipi, you are the first one, followed by Hussein. Mukalipi, Hussein, Direko. Who else? Colleagues. Lutuli. Who else? So I'll take those first 4 and we'll see as we progress. Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just want to engage the acting CEO on the presentation. Firstly, let us welcome the presentation, acting CEO. On the presentation on the 2 indicators that will be removed, I just want to engage with you because we must get a very clear understanding on the impact of the completely removal of the indication on the APP. Because when you are saying that number of artisans placed in municipalities will be, I think, will be affected, and that is a job loss. So therefore, we would like to know, why are you taking that decision to as an entity? Because it will have much effect on the people's job. Also, you talk about the number of water and wastewater process controllers placed in municipalities, and is COVID-19, and we are discussing this adjusted budget because we want to address the COVID-19 issues. So if you are deciding as the entity that water and wastewater processes controllers as well must be removed completely, how is going to have a big impact on the ground? That's my issue, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kalipi. Honorable Hussein.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to ask this question, please, and it relates to obviously the budget cuts. I noticed in particular there was the mention that the feasibility studies around water reticulation projects, that's been drastically reduced. There won't be any new ones in the financial year. If Misa can maybe just explain what the impact of that's going to be, as well as the overall impact of the reduction in any other particular targets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hussein. Honorable Direko.
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered by
put your picture on. Honorable Direko, can we just see a bit of you?
Okay, thank you, Chair.
And then you can say whatever you want to say now. Now that we can see you.
Yeah, I'm covered by Honorable Mukalipi because my concern was on the impact of removing the program, and also wanted to know if they remove those programs, do they have any alternative to cover for what the program was doing? Thank you, Chair.
We had the other attendee. Honorable Nkosi. Honorable Nkosi.
I'm covered, but my question, I'm covered by the honorables who have spoken before me. But the other, I'm asking myself that who told the MESA that the COVID will be still there in 2023 if they are reducing those artisans? Thank you, Chair. That's all.
Acting CEO, who's part of your delegation?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I have with me our CFO, Ms. Pezeka Nombembe, and I also have with me Mr. Sam Gobeni, who is the acting DDG for Technical Support Services, and I also have Mr. Victor Matada, who's responsible for strategic planning in the organization. So I'm going to request them to support me with responses to the questions that the members have posed. And I think I'll start with Mr. Sam Gobeni, if he can just respond to the 2 indicators, the very critical indicators that will result in job losses, and we're actually going to contribute towards job creation of those, the placement of those artisans and controllers. So I'm going to request him to just respond, Honorable Chair.
Mr. Ngoven.
Thanks, Honorable Chair, and thanks to the acting CEO for the opportunity. Chair, let me first start off by indicating that the responsibility that we have as MISA is to support municipalities, and we need to take cognizance of the fact that municipalities are responsible for basic services. So any reduction in terms of the work that we do towards supporting municipalities will have a significant impact on municipalities and communities, given that they provide basic services. So there is no surprise that when we talk about the removal of these two indicators, yes, there will be a negative impact. What comes in very clearly is that, yes, there are job opportunities which will be lost to the numbers which were going to be deployed to these municipalities, but at the same time, municipalities will lose in terms of infrastructure, operations and maintenance support that we're going to provide. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to be able to achieve the outcome itself, as the acting CEO has already mentioned. There are several indicators that, together with this one, we're going to contribute towards us achieving, ultimately, in the long run, in the medium to long run, the objective of the institution. How do we know that there will still be COVID post 2020-21? The removal doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be able to bring back, because this is one of the programs that have been approved for rollout. If conditions improve and if we're able to restructure our programs going forward, we might as well bring this support back to the municipalities. So in short, Honorable Chair, there will be a negative impact, but the impact will be mitigated through other interventions that we still have in the APP. Thank you.
See you. Who's next?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think maybe before I give the CFO an opportunity to respond, just to respond on Honorable Hussein's question about the impact of not doing the feasibility studies in the prioritized water services authorities. Yes, there's going to be an impact, because it then means that municipalities are going to continue having projects that are not aligned to the bulk that has been provided by, for example, the Department of Water and Sanitation. And we're in the process of engaging the Department of Water and Sanitation in terms of how we can then assist municipalities as they reprioritize their grants, and in particular the municipal infrastructure grant, that during that reprioritization process, at least they ensure that the projects that they will be implementing are aligned to the bulk infrastructure that the Department of Water and Sanitation has already put in place. So we may not afford to do feasibility studies because they can be quite costly at times. But what we'll be doing is then engaging the Department of Water and Sanitation in us assisting the water services authorities, that whatever projects that they reprioritize for water and sanitation are aligned to the existing bulk infrastructure. I think then maybe the CFO can just comment on the budget cuts. I'm not sure that there's much that she can comment on, but if she has any comments, then she can comment. But I think the two critical questions have been responded to. CFO?
Good evening, Honorable Chairs and members of the committees, both Portfolio and Select Committee. I think the acting CEO has covered me. One, when she was presenting the financial part, and number two, in responding to the impact on discontinuation of feasibility studies. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, CFO. Colleagues, are there any other follow-up matters?
Yes, Honorable Chair, Kaba here.
It's new hand. New hand is not follow-up. It's a new hand.
Yes.
You didn't raise questions earlier.
Yes.
Who else? Who else?
I'm covered. Honorable Hadebe is covered.
Hadebe is covered.
Chairperson, maybe you'll summarize for me because I didn't hear properly what was their response in regards to the job losses. I don't know why Honorable Hadebe is covered though.
You know why it's covered. I'll do that. I'll do that. I heard them loud and clear for you. Let's allow Honorable Kiraba. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I have a problem about the MISA, man. You see, MISA, always they come to us and tell us things that are not happening. As you know, Chair, MISA sent me here in KwaZulu-Natal and send a guy from Pietermaritzburg to come and hear what is the problem about the water here in Ward 6 and Ward 5. Until today, after that, I hear that they were arrested. Until today, they will not even come back to the people. They are fighting with me here. If the MISA can tell us truth, what they are doing and where. Because what they are saying they are doing, I mean, I cannot even attest to that thing because they put me here in KZN, they make me to be a liar here. Where is the MISA now to support the municipality to come and put and give people water here in Ward 6? There is no water here in Ward 6 as we speak. And in Ward 6, there are pipes that are underway, are inside all over here, but no water is happening here. People, they don't have water. As the government, what is that, command council, every day tell people that they must wash their hands. They will wash their hands about what? Because MISA is came here and telling us things that are not true. They are not true what they are saying here, these people. If it's true, where is the water in Ward 6? I mean, Ward 6 as we speak today, there is no water. I mean, people are crying about water and they are calling me every day and say you came with people that they were sent by MISA. Because I told them that MISA, these people, they are from MISA in the province. They are sent by the CEO from the national. Even today, I mean, I cannot agree that MISA, there is something that they are doing except to be arrested. Yes, I can agree that they were arrested. But to say they are giving people water, they are talking with the water sanitation, to do what? Where's the water here in Ward 6? Thank you, Chair.
I think, CEO, you are responsible for infrastructure. That could be a question. Ne? Or can...
Chair?
Yes. You are breaking, Honorable Mkalipi.
Respect, Chair. I think that the CEO must respond.
We can hear you. You are breaking, Honorable Mkalipi.
Okay, check it. Can you hear me now?
No, you are breaking. Unless you text that to me, I'm gonna raise it quickly.
The connection is better.
Yes.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Bad.
I'll try
Can she send me her question? I'll ask her on.
Send Honorable David the question for Honorable Kazadebe.
Yeah, it's next week, Chairperson. Okay.
That's better. That's better.
Okay, sure, Chair. I will.
Proceed. Proceed. Honorable Mkalipi. Okay. The question of
Yeah, I'm back. Am I audible? Okay. Yes. Do you hear me, Chairperson?
You are. You can proceed.
Yes, yes. I really want to emphasize on the point of Mamkize. Chairperson, this is very bad. This is not the first time Honorable Mamkize is raising this. And I remember, where does this emanate from? This matter of Mamkize, when she engaged the MISA, it was long before, when we have a strategic plan. That was, I think it was last year. And it can't be that each time when MISA is there and Honorable Mamkize must raise the very same question. So the CEO of MISA must take serious what Mamkize is. So I appeal to you, Chairperson, that it must be the last time Mamkize is frustrated about this matter as a member of the Portfolio Committee. So the CEO respond. Yeah,
Mr. Ngove,
he must respond for this last.
Mr. Ngove. Mr. Ngove, you know the problem of Mamkize.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Yes, I am aware that the Honorable Member has on several occasions raised this matter with the MISA accounting officer. Chair, can we be allowed to make a commitment to give a report back to the Honorable Member through the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on exactly what is transpiring in the area? And I believe members will best understand that our responsibility as MISA is not to provide infrastructure, but to support municipalities in those spaces to provide infrastructure. And there is no way that we're going to run away from this responsibility. Hence, we should be able to give very soon a very good report in terms of what is obtaining, and if there are plans which are underway in terms of resolving the matter that the Honorable is referring to, will indicate and also show the time frames. We don't want to commit here without tangible information, Honorable Chair, but the matter is noted.
The issue on this one is a pity. As CEO is having a bereavement. I think we'll have to write to him on this matter. Remember, last time he assured Mamkize to attend to the matter. Acting CEO, can you take this matter and raise it sharply with the CEO? We can't continue to have a matter that keeps on continuing. Every time we have a meeting with you, Mamkize will raise this issue, because this is the matter that emanated in our induction as a committee. June, if I'm not mistaken, last year. It's almost a year Mamkize has been raising this issue with your good selves, and it can't be. So that's the message that you must take home, all of you, that this matter must be resolved. In fact, we need a written response in the next 7 days on this matter, because it has been long hanging, this matter. It can't be that it continue to be Mamkize all the time will be raising these issues. Those are the issues. The other matter, colleagues, I should believe then we need to dispose this matter of MISA. Already we've exceeded Parliament's time by 6 minutes. The other issue that, colleagues, I wanted us to deal with was with regard to there's a correspondence that has been sent to us by the DG. It's for, I think then we'll deal with that matter when we reconvene, when the DG comes, also in relation to the bill, because we wanted clarity in that correspondence. Can I ask, it purely affect NA members? Then I think we'll deal with it in our normal committee meeting in the absence of the colleagues from the NCOP. Can I hand over to the chair? Maybe let me first deal with the quorum issues so that the chairperson will just close the meeting, make some closing remarks. From the NCOP side, in our attendance, we have the chair of the select committee, Honorable Dodovu. Then we had Honorable Mfayela, Honorable Kenny Mtamai, Honorable Zandamela, Honorable Karin Fessel, Honorable Zuki Ngita, Honorable Mathamola, Honorable Enoch Mutetwa, Honorable Seleku, Honorable Martha Bartlett, and Honorable George Mikalikis. And then on our side, NA, we had Honorable Mukalipi, Honorable Kleza, Honorable Lutuli, Honorable Hussein, Honorable Brink, Honorable Kava, Honorable Hadebe, Honorable Kurnevald, Honorable Direko, Honorable Mpumza. That's the attendance. Honorable Kava indicated that's the attendance from the NA side. Unless if there's anyone that have omitted, we had an apology from the NA side of Honorable Opperman and Honorable Ko. Those were the two apologies from our side on the NA. Otherwise, the meeting was full house. Chair, can you close up the meeting? Over to you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Chair Mutambi. I think this was a long but useful meeting. And as I was observing, we didn't only deal with issues of the budget, but members took the opportunity to get clarity on other issues that are extremely important as per the work of both MISA and the component of the traditional affairs, which is quite good. And I think it is quite important that we must continue to engage with these agencies. And I agree that we need to make a lot of follow-ups in terms of dealing with that. I think we have understood what the budget adjustments of the traditional affairs and MISA are. That is the difference of 5 million from MISA and 3 million rand from the traditional affairs. And we are going to continue to engage with these agencies throughout the year so that they not only stick on their budgets, but they also ensure that they impact positively under the operations of COVID-19. Having said that, Honorable Chair, I think we must thank the leadership of COGTA with the understanding that we still have to make a follow-up meeting with the minister, the DG, as with regard to the component of cooperative governance. We will continue to engage with that. But having said that, thank the officials from MISA, led by the acting CEO, as well as the DG of Traditional Affairs. I think this was quite a wonderful engagement from their side. And on that score, also thank members of Parliament for actively participating, asking questions and getting clarity in respect of those particular questions. On that note, I take this opportunity to say that the meeting is formally adjourned. Thank you very much.
Before that, there's an announcement for tomorrow. We're also inviting members of the NCOP to join us if they will be free from 6. We are dealing with OR Tambo District Municipality. You might have seen some unpleasant thing all over the media. So we are calling them to come to account to the portfolio committee tomorrow. It will be nice now that we are doing these meetings after hours, even if you have a hectic schedule. It will be nice to have your colleagues from the NCOP so that we work together, because in fact this thing is happening in the municipality, in the province, and that's your area of actual operation as members of the NCOP. We love to have those who will have time to be part of the meeting tomorrow evening. Same time, 18 hours. The link will be sent to all of you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, colleagues.
And
Thank
thanks
you.
to
Good night and take care.
I'm trying. Chair.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Nkosi.